Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Foreign Service Institute's Mabini Dialogue series on Recalibrate or Reinvent, the impact of Industry 4.0 and demographic change on ASEAN's economic integration and the Philippines. Today we're privileged to have two gentlemen who are well distinguished in their respective fields. But before we proceed with the discussion, allow me to give a brief background on why are we having this Mabini dialogue. Having the world's seventh largest economy with a combined GDP of 2.6 trillion US dollars and a growing population of more than 630 million, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, has been regarded as one of the cornerstones, alongside China, of Asia's gradual ascent as the epicenter of the world's economic activity. It is thus important to gain a broader understanding of the impact of the Fourth Industrial Revolution to ASEAN's community building efforts. The key question would be, how will the unprecedented technological breakthroughs that combine digital, physical, and biological spheres reshape the ASEAN way in open regionalism? It is thus vital to discuss the implications of Industry 4.0 to the Philippines, given its standing as one of the founding members of the regional bloc and as one of the best performing economies in the region. Our Mabini dialogue today will tackle the opportunities and challenges faced by ASEAN and member states as it deepens economic integration in the context of Industry 4.0. The dialogue will also discuss the main considerations for the Philippines as it seeks to sustain economic growth in an Industry 4.0 centric environment with a view of substantially contributing to the development of an ASEAN economic community. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our guest speaker for today. Dr. J. Menon is lead economist in the Office of the Chief Economist at the Asian Development Bank in Manila, Philippines, where he works on trade, international investment, and development issues. He joined ADB in 1999 and has worked on the India desk, the Regional Economic Monitoring Unit, the Southeast Asia Department, in the Office for Regional Economic Integration. Prior to joining ADB, he worked as an academic in Australia for more than a decade, mainly at the Center of Policy Studies at Monash University in Melbourne. He has also worked at the University of Melbourne, Victoria University, and the American University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Menon holds adjunct appointments with the Australian National University, the University of Nottingham, UK, and the Cambodian Institute for Cooperation and Peace, and has served on the advisory boards of the University of Nottingham campus in Malaysia and the Cambodia Development Research Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dr. J. Menon.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for the very kind introduction. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. This is the first time I've been in this building. And of course, I could have been working here in this building if I joined ADB a bit sooner than 1999. I think, if I'm not wrong, in 91, we moved from this building, the original ADB, to the one that we have now in Ortigas, next to the Mega Mall. So I could have easily been working here if I was a younger man and if I had arrived earlier, but I missed that opportunity. And actually I've never been here, so it's also nice to finally come here. Of course, I don't have to come here for a passport, not being a Filipino, so this, this is the only reason I would have had to come here. Although I have a DFA card, interestingly enough, which all ADB staff get, so it's good to come back to the home of where that card comes from. Right, when Dorito contacted me about talking to you today, about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, I agreed mainly because we had finished a report recently with the World Economic Forum on the impacts of the Fourth Industrial Revolution on ASEAN, as well as its member countries, including the Philippines. And this was actually launched last year at the ASEAN Summit here in Manila to the ASEAN heads of state. So we are very pleased to be able to present the findings of that study directly to leaders. And we had all of them actually present in the room when this report was presented and launched. This wasn't very long ago, but I thought, oh, by the way, that report is available for free download if you are interested. And in this age of Google, I won't, burden you with a horrible hyperlink. I'll just tell you to Google ADB WEF. Actually, that might even be enough. But if you go ADB WEF and 4IR, Fourth Industrial Revolution, you will certainly find a link to the full report. It's on the ADB website, it's on the World Economic Forum website, and it's also been lifted onto various other websites, so it won't be hard to find. You can get the whole report there, including a self-contained executive summary, which I hope you will look at. Okay, so but I didn't want to just repeat what we had already done, so I thought another interesting dimension that interacts with the Fourth Industrial Revolution is demographic change, right? And we have this happening throughout this region in different ways, right? There are both aging and young societies, and the 4IR has implications for how we deal with demographic change, and demographic change itself can impact upon 4IR. So I think it'll be useful to bring both those things together when looking at impacts and responses. And that's what I will try to do today, although I understand that the greater interest is on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Okay, so let me start with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Are you controlling it or am I? I am, okay. Yeah, right. Okay, right. With my eyesight, I think I'll look at my notes here while you look at that. It might be a bit easier. So I think all of you have heard of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and come across it in different ways. A very broad description would see them defined as a set of highly disruptive technologies, and these include AI, robotics, blockchain, 3D printing, and the list goes on and on. Now, the changes that the Fourth Industrial Revolution are bringing are by definition revolutionary. And this is not only because of how many sectors they're likely to affect, but also the speed at which they're doing that, right? Every time we have a revolution, and this is the fourth, people say, oh wow, this one is so different from the last. And that's true, but this time it really is. Of course, they said that every time also. But you can be skeptical, but things are changing so fast that it's actually hard to even imagine what it is, let alone how it's impacting us, right? The definition of the Fourth Industrial Revolution is inherently dynamic, and so it is changing, and so trying to keep track of its impacts is a 1 degree harder problem, right? But that doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that it's going to be harder for us to understand what it is and what it's doing to us. But what it's doing to us, it's quite clear, it's transforming almost every aspect of our lives, right? Social, economic, political, every aspect, and in unpredictable ways. Okay? Right. Our jobs, our business models, our industrial structures, the way in which we interact socially, this may be good, may be bad, but it's happening. And even our systems of governance are now changing because of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Okay, so let me begin with the likely economic implications, starting with economic growth, right? Again, I just want to repeat this qualification. This is what we expect given what we know now, right? And what we understand the 4IR to be as it is today, right? And we have some idea about how it's evolving, but again, the evolution itself is what economists like to call endogenous, right? So its evolution depends on how it's evolving, okay? So this creates a very complex system, and so what might actually happen a year from now could be quite different from what we think of what it is today. Okay, so just that qualification, because of the nature of the beast. Okay, but having said that, I think we should recognize that the Fourth Industrial Revolution creates both opportunities as well as challenges, right? Okay, and the opportunities can be great, okay, and they range covering all types of economies, from very poor developing countries to the most advanced industrialized nations, right? But for developing countries like the Philippines, the great opportunity that the 4IR provides is for technological leapfrogging, okay? So there's many examples of this, but let me just give you a couple. Let me give you one which relates to ADB, the work that we are doing in some of our countries. In very poor regions in countries, it is usually very difficult and or expensive to provide links to the electricity grid for electrification, right? And the 4IR, through solar energy, provides an opportunity to bypass that huge and expensive infrastructure investment, right? By creating solar parks in regional remote centers, you can provide self-contained electricity coverage for very isolated regions, right? The cost of solar panels are forever falling thanks to the Chinese, who keep producing them cheaper and cheaper. But importantly, the storage, right, the batteries, that's where the high costs are, is also getting better and cheaper. And so this is becoming a real practical option for electrification in remote regions. And all developing countries have remote regions that have, even if they have electricity, it's not reliable electricity. This could either provide them electricity for the first time or supplement existing sources so that the unreliability, you know, the brownouts, the word that I learned only after coming to the Philippines, the brownouts, and also the interruptions by spikes and so on, which can damage equipment, computers, cell phones. Those things can be moderated by supplementing the electricity sources through solar technology in isolated regions. Of course, the most common example of leapfrogging is, avoiding the high fixed costs of providing landline connectivity and replacing it with mobile phones, right? Yeah. So that's an obvious advantage, a clear advantage for developing countries, right? But then the 4IR is affecting our productivity in almost everything that we do, right? From the most menial tasks to the most sophisticated service sector industries, right? It's improving productivity, profitability, right, by reducing costs, sustainability in agriculture, manufacturing, and services, right? Through better use of scarce resources, replacing non-renewable resources with renewable ones, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you've come across so many examples, even from reading the newspapers on a daily basis. So ASEAN has tried to estimate the productivity gains that could be unleashed, and they estimate it to range between 220 billion to 625 billion. Okay, now that's a very wide range, and it reflects the uncertainty about the evolution of the technology itself. And that is supposed to be up to the year 2030. Okay. Let me move on with other economic implications. 4IR will also expand consumer choice, it will lower costs, and raise both the quantity and quality of products and services, right? It will create new ways for us to connect, to trade, to access services, even the ones that are currently being accessed, and even new ones that were not available in the past, right? We've all come across, the tremendous changes that Amazon and Alibaba and all these e-commerce companies have done in affecting our lives. This is likely to continue going forward. But then this greater reliance on digital and online services will also bring new challenges, both to personal security and the security of our private information. Okay? So issues of security, privacy, and intellectual property rights also have to be addressed as we become ever more reliant on digital and online services to conduct so many activities, from buying, from ordering your lunch to doing your banking, to even booking your holidays in a remote part of the world. Okay, so the privacy of that information being transmitted across the international network or the internet is an issue that has to be looked at. You've all heard, I'm sure, about the issues with Facebook, the selling of information and the use of that information in the last election. That is only one example, and of course this can be magnified, many folds. Again, you heard about probably the breach in British Airways just a few days ago with the hacking of their website and their computer systems, with a lot of personal information that can be sold. The reason why people do this is information is valuable and can be used for targeted marketing, and this is why hackers are out there doing what they do. Okay, so we'll need to try and guard against those things as we become more reliant on the online personalities. Okay. Still with economic implications, let me move on to trade, investment, and global value chains, right? So the 4IR and online services, digital technologies can significantly reduce the costs faced by small and medium enterprises, okay? Allowing them to participate in regional and global trade when they could never afford to do so in the past, right? For a long time, trade and investment was almost the exclusive domain of large multinationals, okay? It became synonymous, right? Most of world trade was intra-firm trade between these gigantic companies, and there were huge startup costs, huge sunk costs of engaging in trade. Now that infrastructure that you need to engage in trade is being provided at very low cost through something called the internet, right? And SMEs now all over the world, in all remote parts of any region, can use the internet to engage in international trade, okay? And this, I think, is important in increasing the inclusiveness of growth, the challenge that we are all facing as we try to develop, right? The rising disparities between the rich and the poor, and the 4IR itself, right, will directly contribute to rising inequality, as well as in other ways reduce it. So this is important because it's not just going to increase inequality, there are ways in which it might also help increase inclusiveness, okay? But if artificial intelligence and robotics start to replace low-cost, low-skilled labor, then this could lead to reshoring of production back to industrialized countries and have quite devastating effects on some parts of the developing world, right? In some developing countries. I'll come back to this in a minute, okay? When talking about employment, okay? So again here, 4IR can create new employment opportunities in new industries, expansion of existing industries, and services especially, right? The services sector. And I don't have to tell the story very vividly here. You all know about the BPO industry here and all its offshoots. But then, as I was just saying, AI can threaten jobs, and the immediate threat will be to low-skilled, repetitive jobs, like in assembly lines and so forth. But I think we should not forget that people will still need to look over the robots, right? When robots start looking over other robots, then we have a different kind of problem. That could be the end of the world, according to Stephen Hawking. If artificial intelligence finally starts becoming human-like. But until then, and hopefully that never happens, people will still have to monitor robots. So while it will displace a lot of jobs, it will not take them all away. And it might start with the repetitive jobs, but it will move on to more high-skilled jobs over time. In fact, we're already starting to see that in some of the service industries, in diagnostics, in the medical field, in the engineering field, in design, and so on and so forth. Okay, right. So let me now talk about a negative aspect, a bit more about a negative aspect, which is important, I think, which is the potential for the 4IR to add to inequality, right? I was just reading yesterday the new World Inequality Report. It just come out. Again, free for download if you're interested. Just Google it, World Inequality Report. And the picture gets worse, right? The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Inequality across countries is narrowing, but within countries is growing, okay? ASEAN is a great example, right? The poorest countries are growing quite fast, right? Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam are growing faster than the more developed countries, except Philippines actually. Philippines, of course, is still growing very fast, although there's been lately a bit of slowing down, but still the national, the annual growth rate is still quite high. So this faster growth rate is narrowing gaps between countries, but at the same time increasing gaps within countries, right? Yeah. So one type of inequality is reducing one type of inequality is generating another type of inequality. Okay. And the 4IR could accelerate the problem, right? Because returns to highly skilled work and knowledge-based occupations will be increasing faster than other occupations within the country, right? And then there's also, as I said, the possibility, the growing possibility of low-skilled workers losing their work, right? Having to be retrained to take on new tasks. So while the gaps between countries are narrowing, as I said, inequality, if the 4IR benefits mainly Singapore, let's say, and no one else, right? Then gaps within the region could also grow. Okay? So this is something that they need to try and address. The more developed countries are already better prepared to deal with the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities. The poorer countries, including the Philippines, must catch up with preparedness and avoid falling further behind. Okay. Right. So that's all I wanted to say about the 4IR and its economic implications. Now, let me quickly run you through the demographic transitions taking place, and then I want to finally come back to discuss the impact and the response together, right? Because I think we shouldn't treat these as separate. 4IR and demographic transitions are related, right? So I would like to discuss their impacts and their responses jointly. Okay. So we've heard a lot about aging. A lot of ASEAN is aging, right? A lot of Asia is aging. China is aging quite fast. Of course, Japan and Korea even more so. But so is Thailand and now Vietnam. Malaysia and Brunei is somewhere in the middle. And Philippines actually still has a high fertility rate and still a relatively young population. Okay? Right. But then things can change, right? Transitions can take place unexpectedly fast, and then suddenly you're no longer a young population, but you're suddenly aging very fast, right? And this has happened in Vietnam, actually, which we thought was a young population, and suddenly, you know, that also changed with rapid changes in fertility rates, right? Okay. Right. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to try and move on a bit faster here. So what are the impacts of aging then? Okay, so I think just very quickly, we all know that, you know, an aging society means a shrinking labor force, right? a shrinking labor force will contract your economic growth and eventually the size of your economy, right? But it will also affect your productivity as you go forward, and in its most advanced form, the so-called demographic dividend becomes a demographic tax, okay, as the labor force or labor supply contracts. In contrast, younger countries have the potential to earn significant dividends in the years ahead, but then the benefits will not come automatically. Okay? So let me, for aging again, and aging is very advanced. The challenge is in limiting or replacing the labor shortfalls, right? Here, greater automation and other technologies in the 4IR can play a role. And we have seen this happening in Japan, for instance, but also many other countries. Aging countries could also try to increase their labor force by facilitating the entry of young adults into the labor force, removing barriers to the participation of women, right? This is a big thing in countries like Japan, right? And also to some extent Korea. Increasing mandatory retirement age, this is what a lot of European countries are doing, or even removing it, and adopting more flexible working arrangements. Okay. But for the younger countries like the Philippines, right, currently still relatively young population, the challenge is in providing productive employment, okay, for a growing labor force, particularly in light of the 4IR and growing automation, okay? So the challenge lies in creating better opportunities at home for people to be employed in decent jobs paying good wages, okay? So this is also the challenge for India, another young economy in the region, but with a massive population. So everyone talks about the demographic dividend, but there's no dividend unless you can create jobs, okay? You have to create jobs, sustainable jobs that pay hopefully decent wages, okay, for you to reap the demographic dividend. But I want to actually be a bit less pessimistic about the job losses associated with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Okay, there's a number of doomsday sayers out there, or doomsayers out there, who see massive retrenchment, massive unemployment coming through automation and artificial intelligence, robotics. I think perhaps it's not going to be that bad. This is not to say we shouldn't be getting prepared, but I think if we look at history, with every technological revolution that we've been through, every industrial revolution, what have we observed, right? We've observed that living standards have improved, employment has increased, and we've been better off. Okay? Sure, there have been people thrown out of some occupations, but they've been able to be retrained to take on new tasks. Okay? So there are adjustment costs, but at the end of the day, we've always been better off. Okay? Ever since the first Homo erectus turned a piece of stone into a tool, right? The first technological revolution, first productivity breakthrough, our living standards have improved, okay, over the years. And I see the Fourth Industrial Revolution doing pretty much the same thing in the end, despite all the concerns. I think we'll find that, as the OECD has found, the number of job losses are probably not going to be as high, right? Of course, that's the developed country analysis. It might be a bit worse in developing countries, but I think there won't be the huge disruptions that people are fearing. And I think it's partly because it's easier to predict job losses than to forecast new jobs in industries we don't yet have, right? So for the industries that will emerge in the future, we don't know what they're going to be yet, but we can see more clearly where jobs might be lost, right? The assembly line type work. So there's this disparity or asymmetry, okay, that might account for the pessimism. Okay. But having said all that, we still need to prepare for the disruption, right? And certainly we'll hear a lot more about this from our discussant, I'm sure. What the main thing that we need to do is to invest in ourselves, right? Invest in human capital, and to counter the job losses by reskilling. And to do that, I think we require a transformation in education. This should start with government taking a leadership role, but it has to involve the private sector as well, right? Including firms like Workhorse that you'll hear about soon. Okay. Lifelong learning now is no longer a hobby, but a necessity. Okay? And I think educational systems will have to teach us how to learn to keep learning. Okay? So the days when you develop a set of skills and then apply them to your occupation are fast becoming obsolete. Okay? So you develop a set of skills that allows you to keep adapting to changing needs. That has become the new requirement, I think. Learning how to keep learning in a changing environment rather than specializing in a set of fixed skills is what I think the Fourth Industrial Revolution will require. This is the knowledge-based economy of the future, but the future is rapidly approaching. Okay, and I think regional education networks would have to connect more seamlessly. Okay, there are lots of new ways to learn these days through the internet, and education systems and networks need to grow to help strengthen that across the region. And there are innovation incubators being established, including by ASEAN Secretariat, actually, quite interestingly, and I think this is also important going forward. Okay. Right. So there's no solution, I think, in the long term than investing in ourselves to better equip ourselves to adapt to these changes, investing in education and skills development. But in the short run, I think, and we all live in the short run, right? We can address these challenges by increasing labor mobility, okay? ASEAN countries are still struggling with this issue. It's highly sensitive, and of course they are only dealing with the professions, right? In fact, most of those professions itself, some would argue, are already outdated, right, given the 4IR. But still, they are struggling to get mutual recognition arrangements for, I think, about 11 if not 13 professions. They're struggling, but they're still working on it. Unskilled labor, of course, is not on the table. Yeah. So we have to look at how we can speed this up, right? To allow countries to import the skills that they need, right? Including the 4IR high-tech skills. And when workers are displaced at home by the 4IR, allow them to also move within the region to try and take up new opportunities, especially given the demographic transitions. So young populations can help supplement shrinking labor supplies in aging populations, okay, if they're allowed to move more freely within the region. And this is where regional cooperation has to play a role, and I would like to end with this point. And this is where ADB also tries to support regional institutions like ASEAN, APEC, and now we're talking about the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which brings in the +6 countries to work with ASEAN, right? The +6, of course, Australia, New Zealand, India, China, Japan, and Korea, right? We hope that RCEP will be concluded this year, okay? There's a lot of pressure now to try and get it concluded. We know the TPP now has been reconfigured without the US to become the CPTPP. That's also facing challenges. Malaysia is reconsidering its participation, and so RCEP might pick up and fill that gap going forward. But there is a role for regional cooperation in dealing with both the 4IR and demographic change. And while a lot of changes will have to happen, in fact most of the changes will have to happen at the national level, regional organizations and institutions can play a complementary role. Okay, so let me just summarize and finish up by looking at the bottom line. Okay, so I think to conclude, the impact of the 4IR combined with the demographic transitions will be very difficult to predict accurately, right? We can broadly forecast the trends, but this is a moving target, okay? Nevertheless, right, we have to start responding to these broad trends immediately, right? And the impact will depend on how we respond, right? What policies we change, what institutions we create in response to these challenges, okay? And they're both opportunities and challenges, okay? There are things to be gained as well if you can grasp the opportunities and not just focus on the negative side, right? So policymakers at both the national and regional levels will need to start refashioning their institutions and policies, and they need to do so starting now. Okay, I think I'll stop there and look forward to the comments from my discussants and also to your questions, hopefully later on. So thank you for your patience. I hope I didn't speak too long, actually, less than 1 hour, as I planned. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Menon, for the comprehensive discussion on the impact of 4IR on ASEAN. Now, allow me to introduce our discussant and to give us a brief description on how is the private sector adapting to the 4th Industrial Revolution. Mr. Reynaldo Lucto Jr., Ray Lucto, is the President and CEO of Hungry Workforce, a digital and cultural transformation consultancy firm, and he's also the co-founder and counselor of Cocos Inc., a data privacy and business advisory firm. He has engaged with several companies and organizations on digital transformation and innovation, helping them in strategy and execution. He is also the chairman, independent director, co-founder, and advisor of several startup and tech companies. Mr. Lucto previously held senior executive roles in Microsoft, Samsung, Globe Telecom, Emerson, and IBM. He is a professional lecturer in the MBA program of De La Salle University and was adjunct faculty of Asian Institute of Management, where he taught digital transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Reynaldo Lucto.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So that was really insightful, Dr. J. Menon. Yeah, we learned a lot, and it's actually validation of the things I will also share. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is indeed impacting the way we live, we work, and we play. I couldn't agree more with Dr. Menon in saying that it affects all aspects of society in a way that is, unpredictable because it gives way, it paves the way for opportunities as well as challenges. What I will do is supplement what Dr. Menon shared with the micro view of what's happening, especially globally and locally. Now, we saw this headline early this year when Toys R Us closed their shops in the US. Another casualty of the fourth industrial revolution, forcing companies who are unable to adapt to close shop. A lot of companies are at the brink of closure because of the inability to adapt. And we see this happening, like in 2017, most of the companies in the top S&P 500 are the traditional oil and utility companies. But in just a decade, many of them has been replaced by companies in the tech sector, mainly in the doing the business in the business of data. That's why data has become now the new oil. So data is now the currency of business in this age of the fourth industrial revolution. And we see a lot of headlines, impacting various industries and even professions. Many of these technologies are affecting, how industries and businesses operate, compete, and even how professionals conduct their jobs. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is an amalgamation of the different technologies, as mentioned by Dr. Menon. Now, all of these are, groundbreaking technologies, but some of them are applications of old technologies, which are resurfacing right now, especially, in the areas of analytics. So, as Dr. Menon shared, there are opportunities and challenges, and he, ably shared the opportunities in productivity, lowering the barriers, between markets, improve quality of lives, and innovative technologies be, melding between scientific and technical. The challenges involve, inequality, cybersecurity and hacking, also mentioned by Dr. Menon, and new ethical concerns. This is an emerging issue because of technology. A lot of ethical issues are emerging. You wouldn't believe that there are many apps now, trying to replace the traditional practices that many of us are used to. Like I heard there's an app already. There's a robotic priest available in Europe. Now, the implications in business and management I will discuss using this system approach. Now, we talk about the industry level, organization level, and leadership and management level. Now we start with industry. No? And again, just reiterating what Dr. Minon said, no? In the supply side, no, it will result in the creation of new ways of serving existing needs, improvement on the quality and speed and price and value of the being delivered. No? Now we see this happening in the Philippines. No? The logistics industry is becoming the next sunrise industry in the Philippines because there's huge potential to be gained in terms of efficiency, no, in the logistics sector. No. So you see large conglomerates investing heavily in logistics companies. You have SM buying into To-Go. You have Ayala moving into warehousing, and even Cebu Pacific converting their planes into charter cargo planes. Right. On the demand side, there's growing transparency, more consumer engagement, and new patterns of consumer behavior. No? Consumer behavior that we probably haven't seen, no? Like consumers interacting with AIs and robots. Those are going to be new patterns of consumer behavior. Now let's move to the organization level. Now, the fourth industrial revolution brings forth a concept called digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is the strategic response of organizations to the opportunities and threats brought forth by the fourth industrial revolution. We define this simply as this. It's the acceleration of activities, processes, and competencies to take advantage of technologies in a strategically aligned way. Now, digital transformation is not about technology. Technology is the last piece in any digital transformation. Now, my company, Hungry Workhorse, have been consulting with several local companies in Philippines. And it's a big realization for me that local companies view digital transformation in a technology way, when in fact it's not. It's about building capabilities that will help companies capitalize on the fourth IR and even ward off threats coming because of the fourth IR. Now I offer a framework for companies to fully maximize the use of digital transformation in the midst of the fourth IR. In any company, there are four components. The first component is operations, product, customer experience, and employees, and probably which is the most important component. And then, digital transformation is all about building capabilities that will help companies capitalize opportunities in the fourth IR. After determining the capabilities that you need as an organization, it's now time to look at technologies. Technologies that will help deliver the capabilities of the organization. Now we will discuss one by one. Like in the profit model, the way your company makes money. An example is how Netflix changed the business model of video rental from the usual renting to subscription. Network, how companies connect to the to other organizations to create value. An example is how Uber created a fleet of cars without owning a single asset of car. Structure, how companies now are using artificial intelligence to replace workers. It's happening now in many first world countries like in Japan. This example, an insurance company changed their as office workers into artificial intelligence robots. Not physical robots, but automating the processes. Process, signature methods. An example is how Zara is using analytics to churn out fast fashion. They're able to bring forth new fashion clothing in just a matter of weeks. The product performance, how Samsung creates new innovative appliances, like an internet-connected refrigerator that enables you to monitor the inventory of the ref. So I think this will be applicable in Philippines. Product system, how UPS in Philippines, if you remember loom bands, when loom bands were fashionable, UPS Philippines, discovered that they saw the pattern that the Philippines has been importing loom bands, and it's causing much delay because of the demand. So they decided to, why not 3D print it? No? And this offering now is a regular offering of UPS all over the world. No? When someone orders a plastic or even rubber or any material that can be 3D printed. Service. How hotels now are using robots, like physical robots, to help enhance customer experience. How Amazon is innovating the channel, how grocery items are delivered to consumers by implementing a just walk out technology. Imagine this store without any cashier or salesperson inside. You just have to get your grocery item and walk out. Again, not possibly applicable in Philippines. Brand, how Virgin is able to capitalize on branding. Nowhere in the world can you find any brand that is named after a single brand, Virgin. And in fact, Virgin now is named after a technology called Hyperloop. This Hyperloop technology is able to transport people from one place to another, which normally takes hours to travel via airplane. Customer engagement, how IKEA is using augmented reality to help their clients choose and even visualize furniture. So all of these examples are changing the way we consume. Now, lastly, employees, company in Germany is using artificial intelligence to align culture with the hiring practices. A lot of companies now are using AI to help companies select the best candidate. Now, these examples are clear indicators of the impact of the fourth IR and the opportunities that are present, as well as the challenges that face the companies, especially in the Philippines. Now, what's the state of digital transformation in the Philippines and in the region? Now, when I was in Microsoft a few years ago, we conducted a study in the region, and I'll share you some studies. Now, the Philippines, according to this survey, 43% are in progress with specific strategy. 32% have a full strategy in place when it comes to digital transformation. Compare that to Asia. Asia has a lower full strategy. So I don't actually believe this statistic, because I believe that a lot of companies in the Philippines do not have the strategy. The main issue among Filipino companies why there's difficulty in implementing digital transformation to capitalize on opportunities and ward off threats is the lack of leadership, lack of digital leadership. We've been working with several companies, and that's the main challenge of the CEO. It's to look for someone who will lead their organizations to digitally transform and capitalize on the fourth IR. There's no one. There's no one in the Philippines, right? So that's the main issue of organizations in Philippines. Compare that to the rest of Asia. The main issue of companies in the rest of Asia is cybersecurity, and the last issue they have is leadership, digital leadership, which is amazing. It's the opposite. Now, the main when it comes to initiatives, companies in the Philippines prioritize customer engagement when it comes to digital transformation. When it comes to technology, artificial intelligence is top of mind, including Internet of Things. That's why you see a lot of companies now moving into chatbots, the simplest form of AI to improve customer service. Now, despite all of these digital transformation initiatives all over the world and in the Philippines, the main barrier is culture. Culture is the single biggest barrier in any transformation. So culture will also prevent us Filipinos from warding off threats of the fourth IR. Now, I offer this framework, the framework of the Spande that describes the four types of culture. So, in any company, there will be different amounts of clan, adhocracy, hierarchy, and market. Right? Adhocracy is all about creativity, risk-taking. Clan is all about teamwork. Market is all about competitiveness. And hierarchy is all about rules and order. Now, according to several studies in the last year, those companies now are able to capitalize on the fourth IR and digital transformation displayed strong shared sense of purpose, freedom to experiment, distributed decision making, and open to the influence of the external world. Those cultures are adhocracy and clan cultures. All right, it's more about risk taking and being collaborative. What's interesting in the Philippines now, I've been doing this survey in Philippine companies and organizations. Filipino companies display high clan culture. It's natural for us. We are a clannish culture, all right? But also high hierarchy, because many of the organizations in Philippines are family companies. Hence, the need to have authoritarian rule. Adhocracy is very low. A lot of respondents lament how low risk-taking and entrepreneurial spirit is in many organizations. Market aggressiveness is medium. All right. So this is the current state of many organizations. Now, I did this survey in one conference with 100+ samples. And if you ask them what they need in the future, they require the same amount of clan, less hierarchy, more adhocracy, and some improvement in the market. So Filipino organization members and employees, we clamor for more risk-taking, more entrepreneurial spirit, and less bureaucracy. That's a clamor in private sector organizations. But the problem we have in Philippines, despite the clan, us being a clan culture, is that we are clannish in our departments, but we display silo mentality across departments, which is still bad because silo mentality is hard to measure. It cannot be measured by any employee engagement survey. You see organizations displaying high employee engagement, but still there's a problem with how they collaborate and communicate. Silo is a big problem in many organizations in the Philippines. What are the skills required in this day and age of the fourth IR? Now, according to studies of Google, 2 decades long of study, and this is aligned to what Dr. Menon said, you have to have the basic STEM, but more important than the basic STEM are soft skills like critical thinking, problem solving, collaborating, being a communicator. And I summed this in the Philippine context. I created a framework that is suitable for Philippines when it comes to enabling Filipino employees. We need to display more empathy, collaboration, and complex problem solving and agile decision making. All of these skills are required so that an employee will not be replaced by a robot. I've seen many organizations, especially in the service sector. One sector we studied is the insurance industry. Especially when you visit a branch of an insurance company. When you transact with this branch, the agents are like robots. They don't look at you, they just ask you questions. So, I tell myself I'd rather talk to a robot with consistent service quality than to an empathic human being. Right? So, empathy is critical in Filipinos. We are naturally empathic as Filipino culture, but we need to turn it on and channel it correctly. Collaboration is also important. Again, we are naturally collaborative as a culture, but we collaborate only with our friends. In our departments, within our division, we don't collaborate across other departments. This is where silo mentality is evident. And then lastly, complex problem solving. Complex problem solving is necessary according to WEF. This is the number one critical skill in the fourth industrial revolution. because of the amounts of data we consume and we use, there's a need to decide based on ill-defined problems. And complex problem solving is composed of three components: critical thinking, creativity, and data analytics. Critical thinking, sorrily, we are getting low in critical thinking. Based on a study last year by the Perils of Perception study, we were listed as the third most ignorant country in the world. But we are also listed the third most confident in the world. A phenomenon called Kruger-Dunning effect. The more ignorant you are, the more confident you are. And this correlates with our standing as the fourth happiest country. We are fourth. So this justifies the saying ignorance is bliss. Right? We are also the third most emotional country in the world. Studies show that high ignorance is correlated to high emotion. All right. So the intersections are naturally communication and teamwork. All right. Now let's talk about impact on leadership. Now leaders are required now to look at companies and organizations on a system-wide level. There's a need to look at organizations where they operate on a system level, where they evaluate inputs versus outputs. And there's a need also to look after sustainability of the enterprise. Strategic management is changing. Gone are the traditional ways of managing, like SWOT, 5 forces. I teach strategic management in LaSalle, MBA. I still teach those concepts, but I supplement with new age concepts in strategic planning and management. There's a need for strategies to be more responsive, more flexible, and adaptive. Decision making. So AI is going to replace much of our mundane decision making. So what's going to be left for leaders and managers and professionals are high-level decision making, those that involve complex problem solving. Ethics is going to be an issue. There's going to be a lot of gray areas in ethics. Imagine an autonomous car in the U.S. Autonomous car in the U.S. Last year reported hitting a woman, an old woman. Imagine the ethical ramifications of that incident. Who's accountable? Is it the programmer? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the agent? So interesting questions and interesting times. So I propose a type of governance that that evaluates every step of the technology adoption. All right. Conclusions: we must all embrace fourth IR, and all sectors of society should prepare. The public and private sector. Businesses should capitalize on the fourth IR, and there's an urgent need for digital leadership. So if you want to be a digital leader, you don't need to understand programming or tech. You just need to understand technology in broad terms. And the most important in fourth IR is culture and behavior. Build a culture that embraces fourth IR. We need a culture in the Philippines among organizations such as risk-taking, entrepreneurial spirit, and collaboration, apart from being competitive in the market. That's all, and thank you for listening.